The day will not save them, and we own the night. Ugh, that's cringy. But that was attributed to Horus Lupercal, Siege of Terror. I'm terrible. Perhaps I should hire somebody to do me a dramatic reading. Anyway, this video will cover, I guess it's a showcase of the Sons of Horus Praetors. Hopefully they should be out, or anybody who pre-ordered them, they should be with you now. I just wanted to share my experiences of the miniature. I painted them in two different styles, in the first company black and then the traditional sea green of the Legion proper. Well, I've painted two, yeah, bully for me, right? I was lucky. I was very, very lucky that a couple of people who have sent them early sent them to me to paint for them. So right from the very off, I'm just an incredibly lucky guy to be able to paint these before they went out. And it's the dream, right? Where I'm able to take miniatures, prepare materials, and have a full tutorial suite ready to go right from the off, right now. So you get the miniature, you can just log in, and boom, it's all right there for you to enjoy. The Justarian Black recipe that I have already on the Patreon, it's a tricky one. I fully admit it. It's a very tricky one to recreate. So this tutorial of the black concentrates on developing a much simpler, preferably suitable for rank and file, but equally appropriate for characters. The model is so chock full of details. You paint this simply, you paint it well, and the miniature kind of does the work for you. So you have little mirror coins sitting at the bottom of his truges. You have Chthonian runic markings along the armor plate. So this language was developed on Chthonian with knife marks. So I believe this is in Mortis, or one of the Siege of Terror books, where it's described how it evolved as a language, where convicts would write the gang sigils on the side of bulkheads. So all the language is very cutting, very straight, very angular. So this miniature has honor marks, Chthonian honor marks. Whether he is Chthonian, because by the end of the siege there was a lot of overlap between who was a purebred space marine of the older mold, or these rushed incarnations that they just kind of like batch painted, but they batch produced, where they had flash indoctrination. They were children scooped up from planets, pumped full of magic gene hormones, shoved in power armor, had a bolter slapped in their hand, and flash fed the reasons why they're fighting. These creatures have no idea of why they're killing or who they're killing. They've been transported into a war that they could have absolutely no context of and expected to fight to the death. How awesome is this universe? Yes, if you were wondering, he is slightly larger than normal rank and file infantry, especially the ones that were released around 10 years ago now. You can see a comparison picture with a Reaver on the screen now. Even though he does stand taller than him, I wouldn't say that it was completely out of context. I wouldn't throw away my previous collection because of this slight rescaling. And I think that's what it is. It's a rescale, not only of the size, the physical size of the miniature, but also the proportions of the miniature. They do sit more naturally. The larger surface area gives you a little bit more room for experimentation. It gives you a little bit more room to do some extra nice things like weathering, developing freehand if you choose to do so, or plain areas of decals. We can see a comparison here with Sigismund. Again, taller, but Sigismund is in a squatted position. And here is a miniature with an alternate head. Just for your consideration, just to throw it in there as a little wrinkle into your decision-making process. My personal preference, I really like the helmet. They remind me of the early sketches seen at Weekenders or in the Horus Heresy visual guide that was produced for the Legiones Astartes when they first kicked up the Horus Heresy project. Since I've been lucky enough to paint these early, I thought why not do a retrospective on them already. And I freely admit I got really lucky with these. So I thought I might run through just the core principles I go through mentally. I guess self-imposed guides when it comes to heresy modelling when I come to paint a project. Because unusually, I had no background information, I had no visual information, I didn't have any box art to work from. So all the decisions made were completely off my own back. The heresy has really strong links with military scale modelling, especially the community, and we employ a lot of techniques developed by them, such as oil modulation, weathering powders, airbrushing, those sorts of things that add a certain level of grit to the miniatures. This all helps create the illusion of photorealistic miniatures. I've said previously that with my technique, the aim is for you to see the universe. It's not for you to see a well-painted miniature, it's for you to be physically transported into this hellish environment and see the character in front of you rather than a painted representation of it. This next point follows on from the first realism. It's mid-battle. Every miniature that I paint for the Horus Heresy has to be depicted mid-battle. This isn't a parade ground representation of the miniature. We don't have perfect armour, we don't have perfect anything. It's all used, bruised, battle-worn. And this doesn't only have to be reflected in the weathering that we apply to the miniature. Parade ground armies look stunning, but this couples with the realism aspect of the miniature. We are seeing the flow of the battle in real time by looking at these miniatures. There'll be dirt, grit, blood stains, and variations in hue of armour from miniature to miniature. Now this is an unusual concept, especially for, well, even advanced miniature painters. It's just a very unusual concept. But each marine, as you view them on the field, will have gone through different experiences. Engine oil, dirt, dust deposits, they'll all make slight variations in hue of the armour. The style which I employ to paint the armies means that there is slight variation from miniature to miniature. You can't wholly and completely recreate exactly the same scheme on each miniature. Why? Because each miniature will have a different style, it will have a different frame, it will have a different pose. A miniature that is hunched over, the armour will be primarily cast in shadow, and it will give an entirely different aspect or reflection than to say a Praetor, like this miniature on screen where his chest is puffed out and a lot of light are hitting the surfaces. This is a head scratching concept for sure, because we are painting an army, it needs to be cohesive. But cohesion can come in the style of weathering, it could come in the style of the metallic trim on the armour, it could come in the style of the sigils used on the miniatures, and more importantly the style of basing. These common elements help tie the force together without each piece being a direct clone of one another. There's simply no excuse for bad form. I wouldn't consider myself a grimdark painter, and that word, it feels like it's been co-opted, it feels like it's been muddied up, if you excuse that, for maybe a laxity in technique or an underdevelopment of technique. The best grimdark painters have a style and they have a technique. There'll be aspects of the miniature that are more impressionistic in nature, but they do not have bad form. There are many aspects to the style, and it is not a cover for bad workmanship in both the airbrush technique or your brush technique. We do joke that Heresy is easier to paint because any mistakes that you make you can cover up with weathering powder. It's true to a certain extent, but the amount of armies that you may seem to see when weathering powder has been overly applied, where oils have been drenched on the miniature and obscured the detail, that's where we run into bad form. Even though we use weathering powders, oils, enamels, you should still tie things together with very tight brushwork, colour modulation and final refinement. This is what sells the realism of the piece. It's the clarity of the final finish. And I'm going to leave you on a controversial bombshell, but the Heresy community, or grimdark painters, can learn from heavier metal. It can learn from the style, the clarity, the finesse of the finish, and the final refinement. Okay, if you're still listening and you haven't written a nasty comment underneath this video, thank you for still watching. So these are the principles we try and instill in all our online students and all our students on our weekend courses. In fact, as I'm recording this, in an hour's time I'll be driving to Yateley to administer a course alongside my fellow tutors Meadows and Matthew Kane. But we're very painfully aware that not everyone is available to attend. And if you do attend, you're not going to remember most of the information there because the weekend flashes by. So that's what these videos are looking for. That's what these videos are created for. A refresher or an introduction to the courses. I'm delighted to say that we have now got Army Painting 1 and 2 samples available on the Patreon. We have a host of masterclass tutorials developing brushwork, airbrush work, and all the concepts in a lot more refined of a manner in the Patreon courses. You can find links below. Alternatively, you could just type in Little Legend Studio Patreon. Hopefully it's the first thing that pops up on Google. And for the price of a bad pizza, you can have nearly 5 years worth of materials right at your fingertips. And please get in contact, ask questions dynamically, and watch the videos and enjoy the PDFs and dynamically engage in them. Ask questions, get feedback, because it's the only way we'll develop you as a painter. And hopefully we'll be able to see you at one of the weekend courses soon. If you're unavailable, or if you are outside the UK and you can get 10 people and you can secure a location for us, or you can help us source one, get in touch and we'll bring the circus to you.